Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here today. I'm Rochelle Seeger. I work here at the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky. Honored to be working on their data initiatives, which includes this training series that we call Health for a Change. The Foundation started Health for a Change in 2011, and it really was to support all those folks in Kentucky, the health advocates, the health departments, people just like yourselves who are working to improve health in Kentucky. So since then, 2011, we've been hosting workshops and webinars where we have reached people in all 120 of Kentucky's counties with nearly 3,000 unique participants joining us for this series. So thank you for being here with us today because we have a really timely topic here today. First, I'm going to give a brief introduction about the Foundation and let you know about some of our upcoming events, and then I'll turn it over to the speakers we have for you today to talk about the 2020 census. The Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky's mission is to address the unmet health needs of Kentuckians. This is a picture from Letcher County, Kentucky when we were down there in June for a regional health forum in Whitesburg, talking with the great folks at Kane Community Kitchen. The mission, we do this mission by developing and influencing policy, improving access to care, reducing health risks and disparities, and promoting health equity. All the information about the Foundation can be found at the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky website, healthy-ky.org. Also there on the Events tab, you'll find our upcoming Health for a Change and recordings of all of these webinars. So if you want to view those in the future or share those with a colleague, it's there on our website, healthy-ky.org. A few of our upcoming events I'd like to share with us. In this Health for a Change series, our training series, tomorrow here at the Foundation offices where I am today in Louisville, we have 60 folks signed up for the Infographics for Social Change. I'm thrilled to have Jessica Bellamy, infographics motion designer, 2017 Adobe Creative Fellow, and Louisvillian present that. Tomorrow here on September 18th, we'll have a webinar on social media presented by John Blim of WHAS 11 and the Crusade for Children. And in December, we'll have a webinar on teens and e-cigarettes. Great lineup there for December. These are all free, provided to all of us in Kentucky, so please feel free to share those with your colleagues and networks. Also upcoming, just in 2 weeks, it's August already, the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky will be visiting Owensboro for a regional community health forum. This is a conversation around health where Green River Area Development District and the Green River Health Department will be bringing forth their 7 health coalitions in the area to have a conversation on health. Please feel free to join us there. Next up in September, I know everyone has busy schedules. September we'll be hosting a conversation on healthy communities, building out a school health coalition. A lot of the work the Foundation has done has been focused around adverse childhood experiences, and we're excited to start and lead a coalition for school health in Kentucky. The first meeting will be held September 10th in Lexington. That's also open to everyone who's interested in that topic. I'm getting close. I know everyone has busy schedules. The Foundation for Healthy Kentucky's annual health policy forum will be held in September in Lexington. The topic for this year's Howard L. Bose Memorial Health Policy Forum is medical marijuana. That event is also free and open to the public. You can check out the registration page on our website, and it usually does fill, so if you can join us, please do register for that event. Getting close. Another partner of the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky is the Bounce Coalition. They are focused on trauma-informed training, also working around adverse childhood experiences. So if you know those two topics and are interested in learning more, they're hosting Bounce Coalition is hosting 2 trainings in October. So I'm glad to share those with you. Those are co-sponsored by Bellarmine University. My last thing to do here, this is an event I sponsor. It's held every other year. I'm glad to present it with Interact for Health. We'll be up in northern Kentucky in Erlanger at the St. Elizabeth's Training Center up there. It's a data forum. What we do is get together, talk about data and health and how we can use data to improve health in Kentucky. We have a great lineup of speakers there for you. Also presented to you free of charge by Interact for Health, the health foundation in the greater Cincinnati area, and the Foundation. All right, why is this topic so important to me? As I mentioned, I work here at the Foundation for Healthy Kentucky on their data initiatives. So when I look at health data across Kentucky and say, for example, I want to know the percentage of Kentucky adults that are still smoking, I want to know what the denominator is there. And the U.S. Census helps us figure out that denominator, the decennial census. Cancer rates, smoking rates, any sort of health number that I think of is related to the U.S. decennial census. This is a great study I just wanted to leave you with before we get to our fantastic panel of speakers today from George Washington University. And what they looked into was how much federal money from the 16 large federal assistance programs come into Kentucky based on counts from the decennial census. And you can see from the slide here that George Washington University's report has calculated per person in Kentucky, $2,021 comes in from those counts, just from the 16 largest federal assistance. So census is near and dear to my heart. All of us have a lot of work to do to share the burden of making sure there's a complete and accurate census. I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker on the panel, Dr. Larry Ferguson. Dr. Ferguson, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Rochelle. I'm Dr. Larry Ferguson, the President and CEO of Ashland Community and Technical College, but I'm also serving as the statewide champion for the Kentucky Community and Technical College System, our 16 colleges across the state, for Census 2020. And I would like to thank all of our KCTCS Census liaisons, who I see many of them are on this webinar. Each of them were selected by their 16 respective college presidents. And it's critically important that KCTCS supports the Census 2020 initiative. And I'll give you one good example similar to the one that was just shared. In 1819, KCTCS received $59.4 million in grants, mostly related to student success and other initiatives. Many of those grants required that we had accurate data, particularly from the census, to write a strong proposal and to be funded. So this data is critical, and it's also important to note that students, and I'm sure that Michelle will mention this later, are one of the hardest audiences to reach. So KCTCS, being the largest provider of higher education in Kentucky with tens of thousands of students, we play a very critical role in helping to get the word out and ensure that everyone gets counted, particularly this hard-to-reach audience. I believe later in the presentation, Michelle will highlight some of the things that we have already done in the previous year at Hazard Community and Technical College, Big Sandy Community and Technical College, Henderson Community College, and others, events planned around Constitution Day, and that is rapidly approaching again on September 17th, 2019, and we hope that many of our colleges are planning very engaging and dynamic events to, again, get the word out about Census 2020. And with that being said, I'd like to turn the webinar over to Mr. Ethan Witt, Director of Government and Community Relations at Eastern Kentucky University.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ferguson, and thanks to everyone for being on today. Dr. Ferguson mentioned our KCTCS participation today. We also have all of the public four-year universities represented, as well as a number of the private colleges and universities throughout the state. So thanks to everyone for being on. My purpose for speaking today is I was appointed by Governor Bevin as the higher ed representative on the 2020 Census Task Force. This is a group that's been meeting quarterly for just over a year now, and it's comprised of representatives from many of the key sectors in the state. Local county governments have a representative. Of course, universities have a representative. There are private sector business representatives, as well as Kentucky Farm Bureau and nonprofit agencies throughout the state who come together and play a critical role in ensuring we have a successful count in 2020. Regarding higher ed, I want to thank Michelle Ellison with the Census Bureau for her work and all the groundwork she's laid over the previous year since I've been working with her. It started last fall when Michelle was able to visit a CPE President's meeting and give a general update to all the presidents about the efforts as we prepare for the 2020 census. And at that meeting, she was in front of all the four-year public presidents. Dr. Box is there from KCTCS, as well as a representative from the Independent Colleges and Universities Association that represents the independent colleges here in the state. From that, the different liaisons were appointed at each campus, and since then we've really been full steam ahead as we prepare for 2020. Last year was a good launching point with the Constitution Day festivities. I know a number of the universities and colleges took advantage of that observance to begin promoting Constitution Day. And as we prepare for this upcoming Constitution Day next month, that's going to be a critical time on all of our campuses to really launch and refocus our students, faculty, and staff as we approach the 2020 census. And I can't overstress the critical role that higher ed plays in this, particularly universities like the one where I work, where we have students who live on campus. Their hometown is perhaps somewhere else in the state, but they live on our campus for the majority of the year. Something I learned early on is that they're supposed to be counted for census purposes as living in our community on our campus. So that's something we're going to be focusing on our campus, is ensuring that the thousands of students we have who live in Madison County most of the year but may be from somewhere else in the state are properly counted here in Madison County. Is just one example of the critical role that we play. So I think the question is, what can we do to ensure that we're adequately prepared? The first thing I want to mention is complete count committees. I know that UK, U of L, and EKU have already indicated a desire to establish their own internal complete count committees to focus solely on our work on campuses. That's something that I would encourage any university or college with an interest to pursue, basically to bring our internal stakeholders together and ensure that we're properly reaching our student body. Also important, though, is the county-wide complete count committees. I think in Michelle's presentation, she will have a slide showing which counties have already formed a committee. And for those counties who haven't, particularly in difficult-to-reach areas, I think that's a role where post-secondary institutions can play a critical role, bringing local and community stakeholders to the table to encourage formation of that county-wide complete count committee. And then the final thing I'll mention is various efforts to raise awareness through public service announcements and other communications-related efforts on campus. I know that Coach Calipari recently recorded a video that will be used to promote a complete count in 2020. I know on our campus we're going to be working with various coaches and other high-profile personalities on campus to record similar videos that we're going to use to reach our student body, and I think that's something that can be replicated on campuses throughout the state. So with that, I will stop and turn it over to the expert on the call, and that's Michelle Ellison. And I just want to thank her for all of her work over this last year in laying the groundwork to ensure that our colleges and universities are properly represented and participate at the highest level possible as we prepare for this count. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Witt, and thank you, Dr. Ferguson, for helping kick off this webinar for our colleges and universities across the state. I really appreciate the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky hosting this webinar. And what I would like to do is just kind of use this as an opportunity to get all our colleges and universities sort of on the same page prior to the start of the 2019-2020 school year. I know once school starts, it's going to be a very busy time for you guys. On our side of things with the census, operations are already starting to kick off, so we are kind of being pulled in 1,000 different directions right now. So I wanted to definitely take this chance before summer ends to get us all on the same page. Several of you I have already met, but I'll reintroduce myself. I am a part of a team of partnership specialists working here in Kentucky to help ensure a complete and accurate count for our state. For the last several years, I've been the gal that's basically been trying to prepare our state for the upcoming census, and recently we have brought on about, I believe, a total of 20 more partnership specialists around the state. Many of them have already connected with your colleges and universities, and they are your local experts. They are the people that are going to help you and provide you with the resources as we move forward down the line. We all live here in Kentucky, but we work out of the Philadelphia Regional Office, Regional Census Center. So we report to our bosses in Philadelphia, but we are local. And I just want to start off by kind of doing a Census 101. And I know some of you may be more familiar with why the census is important than others. But as you all probably know, the census is mandated in the Constitution. We are required to conduct an actual count of every single person living in the United States every 10 years. And the main reason for that, of course, is apportionment. The 435 seats in the House of Representatives are apportioned based on our numbers. It's important to know that Kentucky had 7 seats in the House of Representatives. We actually lost one after the 1990 census. So we don't want to lose any more representation. Businesses use census data to conduct market research, to determine where their workforce is. Planners use census data to determine where new schools or new roads are needed. I often refer to the census as the ultimate RSVP because you can't plan for an event like you can't plan for an emergency like an ice storm or a tornado if you don't know how many people in your community are going to be affected by that emergency. But this down here, funding, down in the bottom right corner, that is probably the biggest thing that people just don't realize how much funding is tied to census data. The number is huge, $675 billion every year for the next decade is going to be allocated to states and local governments based on our numbers. $675 billion. That's a huge amount of money. And there are several organizations that have been doing some research to come up, whoops, let's skip past the slide, to come up with some more per capita amount of the money that is tied to census data as it relates to our state. Earlier in this presentation, Rochelle mentioned the George Washington University study, which, as she said, it looked at the top 16 federally funded programs in Kentucky and came up with a number of $2,021 per person. So I usually ask everybody to just simply think of a family of 5 in your community that you know that may be reluctant to respond to the census in 2020. So a mom, a dad, and 3 kids. They're not responding. When you look at that $2,021 per person, that's over $10,000 every year for the next decade that won't be coming into our Kentucky communities because one family chose not to participate. That's a lot of money. If you look at this slide and consider that there are over 275,000 college and university students in our state alone, that's equating to over $500 million every single year for the next decade. That's tied to our college and university students in our state. When you think about how important census data is to distributing the funds to our public colleges and universities, how it affects college tuition grant and loan programs, you begin to realize just how important it is that we start educating folks now so that they understand that they really need to be counted in 2020. And one of the big problems is that students have historically been undercounted in censuses. It's something that I'll talk to you a little bit more about in just a second. But first I want to just give you a quick history of how we did in previous censuses in our state. When I started working for the census, it was back in 2000, and at the time I was a college student at LCC, which is now Bluegrass Community and Technical College. And at that time, only 72% of Kentucky households self-responded to their census questionnaire. Now keep in mind, during 2000, we had both the short and the long form that we would send to households across America. So in previous censuses, every household would receive a questionnaire in the mail, but a small sample of households would receive a much longer, more detailed questionnaire that asked everything from employment to income to, does your house have plumbing? All very important information to collect. But what we found is that when we only collect that information once every 10 years, by the time we would publish it and make it available for the public, it was already outdated because our communities are changing so quickly. We realized we had to change too. So in 2005, we did away with the long form of the decennial census, and we actually turned that information into a monthly survey called the American Community Survey. So even though we're talking about the 10-year census in this webinar, I just want everybody on this call to be aware that the census is out there every month of every year, collecting information from folks in your community for the many surveys that we do, including the American Community Survey. Now, in 2010, we actually increased Kentucky's response rate, self-response rate, to 77%, which was fantastic. And a big reason for that was we had 192 complete count committees established across the state. They were basically made up of the trusted voices in our communities that could help get a message out about how important the census was. Now, while we were thrilled to see that 77%, that response rate increase, that still means that last decade, 23% of our state's population was reluctant to respond to the census. It doesn't mean that those folks did not get counted. It just means that we had to spend a lot of taxpayer dollars to hire folks, to train them, to send them out to people's houses, to knock on doors sometimes 6 or 7 times to collect that information. That's what we're trying to avoid. We just want folks to take 10 minutes to respond to their census questionnaire when they receive it. Now, a few exciting things that are happening in 2020. For the first time in history, we're going to be offering an online response option to complete your census. And I'm so excited about this because I really do think this will have an impact and help us increase the response rate amongst our college student populations. Now keep in mind that Census Day is actually April 1st of 2020. Yes, that's April Fool's Day. It's been that way for several decades now. But before I go past this slide, I just want you to take a look. Those areas, if you're looking at the 2000 map, those darker red areas or lighter shaded red areas are the areas that we had the lowest response from in 2000. You'll see in 2010 we increased our response rate. We did much better, but several of our eastern Kentucky counties were still very reluctant. We still had low responses in those counties. So we've been really focused on those areas this decennial to make sure that we're doing the proper outreach in our eastern Kentucky counties. Now I want to talk to you about who our hard-to-count populations are. When I first started working for the census for this go-around, I asked them to create a map, my office in Philadelphia, identifying the areas of our state that were at highest risk of being undercounted. And on this map of Kentucky that you see, the areas that are in red here are areas that we've been identified as having low response scores in our monthly surveys and also in our previous 2010 census. One of the very first things that I noticed when I looked at this map is that in almost all of these areas there is a college or university. So I made it a priority to really reach out to our colleges and universities early on and start establishing partnerships. I'll talk a little bit about that, but I'm going to go through some of the examples of other hard-to-count populations, and just keep in mind if these folks fit your college and university population, the folks that you serve. Number one, hardest to count population across America is renters. Renters have historically been challenging. It's been challenging to get them to respond to census surveys. I don't know if it's because they don't have that invested tie to the community or because they are highly mobile. Oftentimes they live in buildings that we can't even knock on their doors to collect that information. But renters have been challenging. Of course, our homeless population. We have, and I believe within the college student population, we have students that may be sleeping on somebody's couch, maybe even sleeping in their car. We have folks that do not have a place where they live or stay most of the year, and that presents a challenge for counting them in the census. Low-income households have historically been hard to count in censuses. African American males especially have been hard to count, and I think this is pretty interesting. We only learned that after World War II, when more African American males enlisted in the war than we actually had numbers for in the United States. That was a big eye-opener for us at the Census Bureau, that we have a whole underserved population that we need to focus efforts on. Our foreign-born population is a hard-to-count population. And as you guys know, Kentucky has a lot of immigrants, a lot of migrant workers, a lot of refugees. We have a lot of exchange students. We have a lot of folks living here that may or may not have been born in the United States and may be hesitant or fearful to respond to the 2020 census when that comes around. Children age 0 to 4. This one's a big deal to me because it really wasn't on my radar back in 2010. But apparently children age 0 to 4 are the largest undercounted age population across America. And in 2010, it was estimated that 12,000 children in our state, just age 0 to 4, so these are our babies and our toddlers, were not included in the 2010 census. A big reason for that, people ask, why would folks not include their children? Oftentimes the adult in the household will complete their census questionnaire. They'll fill it out, return it to us, but they will leave their small children off the form. They'll leave the babies and the toddlers off those forms. Often children that are in split households where they spend half the year with mom, half the year with dad, they don't get counted in either household. Kentucky has the largest rate of kinship care of any state in the nation. A lot of grandparents raising grandchildren that do not include their grandchildren on their census questionnaire when they receive that. So that's something that we are really focused on, and I know among our college student population, we have a lot of young parents that fit into all these different categories of being renters or low income or African American who are less likely to respond to the census and to also include their children. But the final one, and the reason we're on this call today, is college students. College students just have historically been hard to count in censuses, and I'm going to tell you why. The main reason for that is quite simply that college students are difficult to catch at home. They are highly mobile. The timing of our census, when we send out these questionnaires and ask our college students to respond, it's right in the middle of spring break at most schools. It's right in the middle of March Madness basketball here in Kentucky. Our college students are focused on midterms. They're focused on, registering for their next semester. They've got a lot on their plate. As you all know, many of our college students live in dormitories or they're renters. And as I said, renters have historically been hard to count in censuses. For college students especially, the ones that live on off-campus housing, they often live with roommates. And the way that we have conducted a census in the past is we would mail one questionnaire to every household, and we would ask one person in that household to step up as the head of that household and fill out their form for everybody that lives there. As you can imagine, it is very challenging to get one college student roommate to fill out that form with accurate information about the roommates that he or she lives with. For many of our college students, this is their first time ever participating in the census. So they're not familiar with it. They maybe don't have any idea why it's so important. But one of the big kickers, and this is something that Mr. Witt mentioned when he was speaking, is that oftentimes when our college students do fill out their census questionnaire, they list their parents' address on their census form instead of their campus address where they are living and staying most of the year. That's where we need them to be counted. We need them to be counted at their campus address, regardless if they go home every summer, if they go home every Christmas break. If most of the year they are living at their campus address, we want them counted there, because if you think about it, that's where they're using the resources most of the year. That's where they are shopping in the stores. That's where they're driving on the roads most of the year. And if our students get sick, that's where, and they need an ambulance, that's what the address where an ambulance will need to come. So we need to make sure that the funding is available for these campus communities to provide those services to all the students that are there during the school year. Now, another big challenge with our college students is that when they don't respond to the census questionnaire, which usually they don't, by the time we, the Census Bureau, go follow up with those households and knock on doors for our non-response follow-up operation, it's May, June, and July. It's summertime. A lot of time our students have already left and gone home for the summer. So more often than not, we're knocking on vacant doors. So that's why it's so important not only that we get our college students to respond, but also to respond to the census in a very timely manner, almost as soon as they receive that invitation to respond by mail. And keep in mind, we have a considerable foreign-born population and exchange students among our college students. In a lot of other countries that do have censuses, their censuses may be tied to taxes, or their censuses may be tied to drafting folks into the military. So there's a lot of reasons that our foreign-born population may be reluctant to respond to the census that we have here in America. Now, I want to show you one slide. I received this from our State Data Center. The executive director there, Matt Ruther, provided me with this slide. And our state's Kentucky State Data Center is actually housed on U of L's campus. And this is a slide that he created to show the difference, the discrepancies between all those numbers in red in this area of U of L's campus. Our numbers, that's using U of L's own administrative data to show how many students they have living in those areas. And then all those numbers in black are the Census Bureau numbers for those areas. So as you can see, there's a pretty large discrepancy between what the universities and colleges know how many students are living on campuses and what we are actually counting in censuses every 10 years. The problem is it's our numbers, it's those black numbers, our Census Bureau numbers that are going to be used to determine the funding that come into our colleges and universities for the next decade. So we need to make sure that we get every student counted and that they're counted in the right place for where they're staying come March of 2020, March and April. Now, the timeline. When is this actually going down? We mentioned March is when we start sending out those forms. So March 12th is the first time that an invitation to respond online to the 2020 census will be mailed out to households. We will start staggering those mailings to every household across America starting on March 12th. Now, by March 16th, 1 week later, everybody that has not responded will receive a reminder letter. By March 26th, another week later, everyone that has not responded by then will also receive a reminder postcard in the mail. But by April of 2020, every household that still has not responded to their census questionnaire online will receive a paper form in the mail. The thought is that we still have a digital divide here in Kentucky, and the thought is folks that have not responded by April maybe don't have easy access to the internet, easy access to a computer to be able to respond online to their census. So we will be mailing every household in America in April a paper questionnaire. Folks will also have the option to respond to the census by phone. And I'm excited because we are offering questionnaire language assistance in 59 different languages. So we've really covered about 99% of the languages represented in the United States that we're going to provide assistance to. Now, for those few remaining languages, we really are going to turn to our colleges and universities to maybe find somebody that can help or that can translate if needed. The final mail out, the final reminder for folks to respond to the census will go out in April 20th through 27th, so that last week of April. So in Kentucky, as you guys know, we have two big events that happen that can help us keep track of the timeline. We need to figure out how can we get 4.5 million people across our state to simply take 10 minutes to respond to their census questionnaire during those 6 weeks between March Madness basketball and Derby weekend. Derby weekend is that final push where if you have not completed your census yet, you really need to, otherwise you will get put into that non-response follow-up operation where folks will come and knock on your door. So colleges and universities, look at these dates here, March through April. Think about every event that is happening on your campus during that time. Every publication, every event or gathering or barbecue or anything that you have going on campus, how can we make sure during that time that every single event on your campus has a census message, has a reminder to folks to respond to the census? Can we plan something? Can we plan an event on your campus to draw your students in and maybe have laptops or iPads available for them to complete their census right then online at that event? These are the things that we need to start preparing for as we move into the 2019-2020 school year. One of the things that I am excited to tell you, I learned my lesson back in 2010. Nobody wants to talk census when UK or U of L or any of our schools are in the March Madness basketball tournaments. So we started pretty early reaching out to the University of Kentucky, and just within the last few weeks, Coach Calipari has actually recorded a PSA in support of the census. We are not releasing this PSA yet. We're going to wait until February and March so that it will not lose its luster. But this is something that we need to do with all our basketball coaches across the state. We need to make sure that at every basketball game, during March and April, there is a census booth set up there. Maybe we can tap into some friendly competitions to see maybe some pledge drives. Which schools can get more students to pledge to respond to the census? There's lots of different creative ways that we can tap into already existing things at your school to help increase the response rate for 2020. So how can colleges and universities help? the very first thing that you can do, and we can start right now, is help us fight misinformation, disinformation, and scams, especially when we're talking about our foreign-born population. As you know, our foreign-born population, there are plenty of folks here in Kentucky that may or may not be citizens of the United States, and they may be scared to respond to the census, especially everything that's been, in the climate in our nation over the last few months. So we need to reassure those folks. The honest truth is that the same law that requires us to collect this information every 10 years, it also protects the data that we collect for 72 years. You cannot get any information from the Census Bureau in anything but statistical format for 72 years, so no personal identifiable information. We do not share this information with other government agencies. This information can never be used against you. We are exempt from the Patriot Act. The Supreme Court has continuously upheld the protections that are in place for our data. So we really need to reassure especially the foreign-born population, but everybody on your campus, that responding to the census is safe, it is secure, and their answers are protected by law. So that's one thing. Another way that we can fight misinformation, disinformation, and scams is by simply educating folks about what we do ask in the census and what we don't ask. Again, the census is very basic. Now that we have done away with the long form, everyone in America just gets a very short, about 10-question questionnaire to answer. And it's very basic questions. We do not ask for a Social Security number. We don't ask for a mother's maiden name or bank account or any kind of donation or any kind of political affiliation. Anything like that should be a red flag to folks that this is not a legitimate census survey. So I think it's very important that we start educating folks now about just what questions we will ask and why we ask those questions. And I'll show you a little later a place where you can go to get resources like a one-page fact sheet that really breaks down why we ask each question on the census questionnaire. Now, Mr. Witt mentioned complete count committees, and this is another way that Census can help us, or that folks can help ensure that we get a complete and accurate count around Kentucky. We are currently reaching out to the county judge executives and the mayors in every county and city in Kentucky. I apologize for coughing, but we are reaching out to everybody across Kentucky, and we are asking them to form for their community what's called a complete count committee. And as you can see, this is a committee made up of basically the local trusted voices, the folks that have outreach to our hard-to-count populations across the state. And on every committee, we're asking if there is a college or university in your community, we need someone from that college or university represented on the local complete count committee. So one of our partners here in Louisville, KIPTA, has created this map, and it shows where we have complete count committees already established in our state and where we still need to focus on. So everything on the western side of the state, those complete count committees are all in red, and there are actually three more of those counties have formed complete count committees. So this map just needs a little bit of updating since I created these slides. And then over on the eastern side, every county that's there in blue has a complete count committee, and there's a couple additional counties that also have already formed complete count committees. But as you can see, several of our eastern Kentucky counties still need to get that committee formed. And this might be something that you can help with. If you live in a county that you see on this map that does not have a committee formed yet, I would encourage you, please reach out to your county judge executive. Please reach out to your mayor. Let them know you want to be a part of this effort. Encourage them to move forward with forming their committee and getting it trained As I said, we have Census Bureau staff across the state that can come in and provide a training for your committee. It takes about 2.5 hours. It's the same training that we're providing counties and committees all across the nation. But what we need is for that first meeting to get scheduled and get pulled together so we can start getting the folks on the right page. So maybe you could offer to host that first committee meeting on your campus. Another thing that you could do is form your own campus committee. So pull together the people on your campus that have outreach to the students, someone that has outreach to alumni and staff, the folks that work for your career centers because we have lots of jobs available. Bring those people together and provide them with this information and start getting them on the same page. I do know that UK and EKU and U of L have already started forming their Complete Count Committee. I actually met with or presented to U of L's committee this week, so I was excited to do that. Another way your school can help, as you guys know or probably have already heard, we are hiring. We are hiring in every county of Kentucky. We have great, good-paying jobs. We're opening 2 offices in our state. One will be open in Louisville and one will be open in Lexington, and they're going to be open by September. So we're kicking off operations right now and hiring the folks to man those offices. But as you can see here, everything from the bottom half down, recruiting assistants down, those are work-from-home positions with very flexible schedules, perfect for our college students. So if you could help us get the word out about the jobs, to apply for any of these jobs, they simply go onto 2020census.gov/jobs. It's a one-and-done thing. You go on, you spend about 30 minutes to put your application in that applicant pool, and your application will stay in there throughout the entire 2020 cycle. So we will have plenty of jobs. If you don't get pulled for this first operation, you very well might get called for the next operation that we're going to embark on, and the next one until we end with the the enumeration, the door-knocking jobs that most people are familiar with. And for those schools and colleges that live near Louisville, I did also want to make you aware of right across the river in Jeffersonville, Indiana, the National Processing Center for the entire U.S. Census Bureau is located right there. And that National Processing Center is also hiring, I believe they're hiring 4,000 plus temporary folks to help with their operations. All of their jobs are posted on usajobs.gov. So I tell folks first, go onto our 2020census.gov/jobs website to apply. That's that one and done. You forget about it. And then start monitoring usajobs.gov to see if there's anything that might fit what you're interested in doing. Another very easy way that you can help with this effort is simply by connecting with us online and on social media. Sign up to get our email alerts. Connect with us on Facebook and Twitter because we do put very interesting things out there that are easily shared with folks. I want you to know the resources that we have available. If you go to 2020census.gov/partners, this is our partnership portal where you can get printed materials. We have posters that can be downloaded. We have fact sheets. We have all kinds of information that you can use this information, or you could take it and tailor it to your own campus. Some of the suggestions that we have for ensuring an accurate count on your campus. As you know, the census fits into everything, whether it's geography, law, history, political science. Reach out to your teachers. Make sure they're incorporating a lesson about the census during this 2019-2020 school year. Host Census Solutions workshops on your campuses. If there are contests, art contests, essay, PSA contests, make the focus of those contests this year about the 2020 census. Again, distribute information at basketball games. Provide language assistance. If you have students that need community service hours, connect them with the local community local complete count committee that needs folks to pass out information at festivals, promote temporary jobs, design census websites, flyers, engage your student reporters and campus media. You know, there's so many opportunities for civic engagement. And the big one, and what I'm going to end this webinar on, is we are actually kicking off census promotions in our state next month in September during Constitution Week. It is a perfect time to start educating not only our students, our faculty, our staff, but also our community members about the importance of the census. So last year we asked several colleges and universities across the state if they would incorporate census into their Constitution Day activities. And I just want to show you a few examples quickly. Northern Kentucky University, I was so impressed with what they did last year. If you guys wouldn't mind, at some point go to nku.edu/becounted and take their Constitution Day quiz, the Be Counted quiz or trivia that was focused on the Census Bureau. This was a really fun way to get the word out. Students were encouraged to take this trivia quiz. It takes about 10 minutes. It asks questions about how much students know about where they should be counted come census time. And at Northern Kentucky University, students were actually given an incentive of having I believe it was a 15% discount or 10% discount at their bookstore if they could show that they took this quiz. Now this is something that could be easily replicated on campuses all across Kentucky, and I would love to see something like that. I think that we have time to replicate this quiz and make it something easy that we push out to our campuses. Eastern Kentucky University and Murray State University both participated. Murray State made me a little nervous. They focused their Constitution Day events on constitutional controversies about the census, but it was great, and I was just glad that they were educating folks on their campus. And EKU held a faculty panel last year to talk about the census, the U.S. Census U-Count faculty panel. So these are some ideas of what you can do this Constitution Day in order to prepare. Kentucky, the KCTCS system sent me these pictures from last year's Constitution Day where they included 2020 census questions in their Constitution Day Jeopardy that they do most years there. And Hazard Community and Technical College, they were wonderful last year. They actually kicked off census promotions in our state with our state's very first Census Solutions workshop called Census Matters, a community forum. And then on Constitution Day, they had tables set up at each of their campuses passing out information and starting to educate folks about the census. Big Sandy Community and Technical College was another one that joined in and helped with this effort with their Constitution Day Who Counts Everybody event. And they also hosted our state's first multi-county complete count committee training, inviting the county judge executives to come and establish their complete count committees there. Here's examples of Henderson and Hopkinsville community colleges that participated last year, as well as Gateway and Bluegrass Community and Technical College and Somerset Community College. Gateway used Constitution Day as a great way to get the word out about the jobs that we had. So these are some unique ideas, and we are almost out of time for this webinar, so I would encourage you, if you guys have any questions at all, please chat them in or email them to me, and I will respond to those questions. I'll follow up with you directly. We will also be sending out a link to this webinar, so use this as a tool. Get the folks together in your community or your campus that need to know about the census, that need to be updated. Provide them with this link to the webinar so that they can get this information directly as well, and then start making your plan for how you're going to prepare your campuses to make sure that everybody counts. The only message I want to leave you with is just that we are going to do a census in 2020. We are going to count everybody. But if we can work with you and partner with you, we can really ensure that we have a successful census, and that we are able to improve the quality of life for our state for the next 10 years. So I appreciate your time, and Rochelle, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thanks so much, Michelle. I learned a great deal on our call today. Again, we have a few more minutes. Please chat in your questions. We won't be able to answer them today, but as Michelle already said, we will be following up with you. A reminder that the whole slide deck you saw today and a recording of the webinar will be posted to the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky's website in just a day or so, and I will send out a reminder email to all of you. First, I want to thank our presenters here today, Dr. Larry Ferguson, Mr. Ethan Witt, and of course Michelle Ellison, our U.S. Census Bureau Partnership Specialist. Thank you for sharing your expertise and inspiration and motivation with us today. I'm here at the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky, and I'm honored to have hosted the webinar for you today. I will be sending you a post-event survey via email today. I would love it if you would take just a few minutes. It takes about 3 minutes to send me your feedback on today's webinar, what you liked, what you didn't, how we can improve for the future. Again, I'm Rochelle Seeger. I work here at the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky, honored to work on their data initiatives. We have social media as well. I tweet out of KY Health Facts, and our Foundation's Twitter account is HealthyKY. Our data website, our Foundation website with lots of information there. Check it out. I would love to meet you in person at an upcoming Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky event. Please feel free to call on me if you see some way we can partner or work together on the Foundation's mission to address the unmet health needs of Kentuckians. Thanks to each of you for joining us today. I hope you have a great afternoon.
That concludes